Okay, thank you all again for joining. I just wanted to take a few moments to offer some thoughts for our conduct here as a group with this session, this Q&A session. So if you don't mind, just so that we know who's joining us today and from where, if you can pop into the chat box your name, the organization you work with, and maybe how long you've been working at that place, so that we can get a better sense of who is with us today. Some of the more technical things that may happen during this call will be answered, any technical questions will be answered by Ivy or Kayla from Hunger Free Vermont, and we'll do our best to keep up with those. But any of the session materials and recordings will also be available post-session, and we apologize for anything that might not work for folks. If you have questions, one of the great features of using a Zoom webinar is that we actually have a Q&A panel for you all to pop those into as folks are sharing their updates. And so we will keep our eyes peeled on those and raise them up to the panelists as they are sharing their information. And then any remaining questions we'll do our best to get to at the end of the updates. And then anything we absolutely are not able to get to, we will follow up with answers after the session. And the last thing that I ask from folks is that we all just join with grace and humor. These are unusual times, and we're using platforms that are new to many of us. And so there will certainly be some snafus and learning along the way over these next 2 days. So again, thank you for joining. And the next thing for me to do is to share who will be with us today before kicking it off to our guests. So today we have Polly Major from the Office of Senator Leahy. We have Erica Campbell from the Office of Senator Sanders. We have Thea Wurzburg from the Office of Congressman Welch. And then from Vermont Food and Nutrition Team, we have Leslie Wisdom, Food and Nutrition Program Director for DCF ESD, Aletha Cross, Food and Nutrition Administrator for DCF ESD, and Haley Turner Lawyer, Food and Nutrition Assistant Administrator for DCF ESD. Okay. So with all of that being said, I am going to stop sharing my screen and turn things over to our first speaker, who will be Polly Major.
Thank you, Phil, and good morning, everyone. It's really exciting to see everybody's names and organizations pop up in the chat. It's a good reminder of the real team effort it takes to have 3 Squares be an effective program in the state, and you all do an incredible job. It's been a challenging 7 or so months, and Vermont has just gone above and beyond to step up and make sure that people can continue to have access to nutrition support. So I cover nutrition for Senator Leahy here in Vermont, and I just want to let you all know how incredibly proud he is of the work that's happening here in the state. We're going to give a kind of brief overview of the federal policy changes related to SNAP from the beginning of the coronavirus pandemic. And then you're going to hear more from the state about how it's specifically being implemented here on the ground. So I'm just going to start by giving a brief overview of the laws that have been passed regarding SNAP and where we are today. And Erica is going to talk about some other nutrition programs that are also impacted by those laws. And Thea is going to wrap up with kind of where we are now and where we hope to go, because a lot of the leadership and the vision on where we should be going nationally with nutrition programs is really coming out of the House. And we've been really grateful for the vision that they've set there. So back in March 18th, the Families First Coronavirus Response Act became law, and that had some important changes for SNAP. It suspended the work-related eligibility requirements that were about to go into effect with the USDA's new ABOD rule. It also included the temporary benefit increase for the duration of the national health emergency. And that was to the maximum monthly benefit. Now, we'd love to see it go above the maximum monthly benefit, but I'm going to leave that debate to Thea. And it also gave the USDA the authority to grant administrative waivers to the states to allow them the flexibility to manage SNAP caseloads in a time that was significantly more challenging. We were all beginning to figure out telework, and we were seeing rising needs for these nutrition programs. So that included more time between reporting and allowing more methods of issuance and simplified interview processes, along with some other administrative flexibilities. And then the next week, the CARES Act was passed, and that included 15.8 billion for nutrition assistance to help manage and fund the increase in demand for SNAP that we were seeing as lockdowns went into effect and as massive unemployment took hold. So I'm going to let the folks at the state talk a little bit more about how Vermont really was able to take advantage of these administrative flexibilities and put them into place so that they could better serve Vermonters. They're the real technical experts on that, and I am so grateful they are here on the call. But I will say that last week, Congress passed and the president signed a continuing resolution to continue the government's funding past the end of the fiscal year, which was September 30th. And that included the Emergency SNAP Flexibilities Extension Act, which allows states to continue to have these flexibilities in their SNAP programs, and through June 30th, 2021, without USDA approval for some of them. And that was important because we were hearing and states were concerned about the USDA starting to pull back some of those flexibilities. And Congress felt that it was really important that states were able to continue to run their programs in a way that was efficient and fairly free of fraud, and most importantly, in a way that allowed Americans to continue to have access to nutrition assistance. So that's kind of the broad overview of the legal framework around SNAP since the beginning of the pandemic. I also wanted to touch on Farmers to Families because it's been such a high profile feeding program through the spring and summer and into the fall. And that program was something that was really born out of the USDA. The Families First Act gave the Secretary of Agriculture the authority to create a program that would distribute food to in emergency situations. And with that authority, Secretary Perdue created the Farmers to Families Food Box program. And we know here in Vermont, it has reached a lot of people. It has helped a lot of farmers, helped a lot of Vermont families, and that is through the incredible work of the Abbey Group and Willing Hands and all the Vermont organizations that have helped make that program a success here in Vermont. But at the end of the day, Senator Leahy, and I'm sure the rest of the delegation, believed that the most efficient way and the most dignified way of delivering federal food assistance to people is through the SNAP program. So while that program, Farmers to Families, has been high profile and thanks to the work of Vermonters has done good work in Vermont, really they want to see a continued focus on SNAP as we move forward and think about how to get food to people in need. So I just want to put in that note there. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Erica Campbell from Senator Sanders' office.
Thanks, Polly. Everybody hear me okay? Good. Yeah, so Erica Campbell, I work at Senator Sanders' office on nutrition issues, and also, on behalf of Senator Sanders, want to thank you, huge thank you to all of you working during this crazy time. I mean, you work all year round on hunger issues, and especially during this pandemic, it's just really been unbelievable. So thank you so much. I just wanted to mention PEBT today. I know this is, a SNAP conference, 3Squares, and PEBT was this a program that came out of the Families First Act early on in the pandemic, and this program basically allowed EBT cards to go to children who qualify for free and reduced meals or are at a school in some form that has universal meals. And this was for when the school was out of session. I mean, nationally, it has been a huge success in the sense that it has, I think it's estimated about, I think FRAC estimates over 3 million children were lifted out of hunger, which is amazing. But it's also been a huge bear to administer. I know that DCF has worked tirelessly trying to administer this program, working with the Agency of Education and schools, and we're able to get, I think, over $15 million out to kids across the state. So just incredible, the work that DCF and partners have been doing on that. And then late this summer, USDA issued some guidance on PBT for the fall, but many states were unable to implement the benefits because there was this provision in Families First that said schools had to be closed. And fortunately, in the recent continuing resolution, the CR that Polly mentioned, it extended the benefits for to the end of fiscal year 2021, but it also had language to allow kids in hybrid school situations to receive PEBT benefits. So, you know, Democrats in Congress are really pushing USDA to issue this updated guidance so it really can see how this will be implemented exactly, and to ensure that, you know, states have this maximum flexibility and ability to get these benefits out to kids. But we just don't know exactly what, if a school is fully closed with a remote option. We just don't know the exact final details, but we know that the intent was to have hybrid schools be included. So, and also we do hear that there was supposed to be more an easier ability for states to administer. But again, we will see. And those benefits are also supposed to be retroactive. And the CR, I forgot to mention, the CR had fixes to earlier relief that included coverage for Puerto Rico and other territories. But for Vermont, importantly, childcare centers that have been affected by COVID-19 closures can also be included that have had like reduced hours. So that's great news. Just real quickly, I wanted to mention WIC. I know there's some WIC partners on the phone here and on the conference today. Vermont Department of Health has done a phenomenal job at pivoting, getting every waiver possible to safely implement the program. They were sort of, I think this summer, starting to spend time having to go back. They were applying for all these waivers for flexibility, preparing to see families again. Fortunately, they're granted a new round of waivers this fall, so they could work with participants remotely and other flexibilities. But the CR did extend those waivers longer. And we've brought probably all, I know Polly and Thea and all the state agencies and other partners know this, just how each individual state applying and reapplying for these short-term waivers has been just really added mountains of work to the states at this time. And we are just so lucky in Vermont to have such adept and hardworking folks working on these issues. I think otherwise in Vermont, we would have seen hunger skyrocket even further. So we will try, I know our bosses, Senator Sanders, we're all working to, make sure that the states have just what they need to do to address hunger. And we, as Anor said, this is going to be a tough winter, and we need to fight like hell. So thanks so much for all your work, and I look forward to the next couple of days of this conference.
Okay. So hi everybody. It's great to be here this morning. I just first off want to echo what Erica and Polly said. We are so incredibly grateful for all of the work that you're all doing. It's so important right now. And I know my boss, Congressman Welch, has been so impressed. He's gone to a number of different food sites across the state throughout the summer, and he's just been blown away by the efforts that everyone is putting in. So thank you so much for all the work you're doing. I'm going to talk just briefly about the 3 USDA SNAP rules, which I'm sure many of you are familiar with. But these are different rules that were put out by USDA that are really harmful to people's ability to access SNAP. So the first one is ABOD, which Polly mentioned briefly, but the able-bodied adult without dependent rule. And this is a policy that would eliminate states' ability to ease SNAP eligibility requirements for people who can't report 20 hours of work per week due to certain economic circumstances, like a pandemic, a recession due to a pandemic. So unfortunately, in March, a federal judge blocked the Trump administration from adopting this final rule. It was due to take effect on April 1st. So right in the middle of the beginning of this pandemic, and it would have forced nearly 700,000 Americans off of SNAP, which is incredibly horrific when we're in the middle of a pandemic, and even in normal times. Secretary Perdue has appealed this injunction, but like Polly mentioned, the ABOD work requirements were paused temporarily in the Families First Act, but we definitely need a long-term fix. The second rule is the standard utility allowance, and this is a rule that would change states' ability to account for the cost of utilities when they calculate SNAP household benefits. And this rule could result in about 19% of SNAP households getting lower SNAP monthly benefits, which again, right now is awful and the opposite of what we need to be doing. There hasn't been a final rule issued yet on this, so we are kind of waiting to see what happens. But again, that's something that needs to be addressed ultimately, hopefully by Congress, to prevent that from happening. And then the last rule is the categorical eligibility, or broad-based categorical eligibility. And this policy would allow states to make, this policy allows states to make low-income families eligible for SNAP benefits if they've already qualified to receive other benefits. And the rule would limit that. So again, there hasn't been a final rule on this issue yet, and that's something that we are keeping an eye on as a delegation and working in Congress to address and prevent from happening, especially during this pandemic. So the next thing I wanted to talk about is where we go from here. I'm sure you've all been hearing about the ongoing negotiations between House, Senate, and the White House when it comes to additional stimulus packages. As some of you might know, the House earlier, I think it was May or June now, I can't remember, but we passed the first version of the HEROES Act. And in reference to these 3 rules, that would have prevented the USDA from implementing all of them. Unfortunately, that package was never taken up or even addressed by the Senate. So through ongoing negotiations, the House just passed HEROES 2.0 is what we're calling it. And this was passed last week or the week before, last week actually. And there's a lot of really good nutrition in it. It is slightly pared down from the initial HEROES Act, but there's still some really good stuff in there. So some of the highlights are that it provides $10 billion for SNAP, $400 million for WIC, $450 million for PFAP, and $1.26 billion for nutrition assistance for territories. In terms of SNAP, it would increase the benefit level by 15% and minimum SNAP benefits to $30 a month until September 30th of 2021. And it waives work requirements for SNAP for 1 year. and provides emergency funding for school meal and child adult care food programs at 55% of reimbursement from the prior year. So there's some really great nutrition stuff that's in Heroes 2.0, and then as Polly mentioned in the CR, the continuing resolution that was passed, there was some other good nutrition funding in there that kind of complements what was in Heroes. So we're hopeful. There's still, the negotiations are still going on between Speaker Pelosi and the White House and the Senate, but hopefully we'll be able to come to some kind of agreement to get additional aid out to states, because as you all are aware, everybody's hurting right now, and it's incredibly important that we are providing this direct assistance to everybody who's in need. And the last thing I just wanted to mention again, or to emphasize, is that, you know, the delegation is just very strongly supportive of making sure that these increases to SNAP benefits happen. We, like Polly and Erica mentioned, we know that this is the most effective way of providing assistance to people who have hunger insecurity. So that is something that I know the congressman will keep fighting for, and the senators as well. So we are all here for you, and thank you again so much for all of the work that you're doing.
Thank you so much, Polly, Erica, and Thea, for sharing these updates with us this morning, and also for all of the hard work our federal delegation is doing on the federal level, on the national level, to make sure that every American has access to these food programs, not just 3Squares Vermont or SNAP, but everything that can ensure their success. So I appreciate you all sharing, and look forward to seeing updates and announcements and whatever comes next, hopefully to celebrate. Next, I am going to turn it over to our guests from the Department for Children and Families to share their Vermont updates. And please feel free to shoot questions into the Q&A that we can raise to them, or otherwise we will get to them in the chat box as well.
Good morning. Thank you, Phil. Hi, I'm Leslie Wisdom. I'm the new 3Squares Program Director. I started at the end of April, so in the middle of the pandemic, which is an interesting time to start a job, I'll say for sure. Just to give you a little bit of background, I've worked for the Vermont Agency of Human Services for almost 14 years. In an attorney role, I was General Counsel of the department for 6 years prior to this role. And I'm so excited to be part of the 3Squares program. So this morning, I'm going to share some COVID-related updates about our program. And just to set the stage for you, I can let you know that since COVID's begun, we at ESD have seen rising call volumes and new applications for 3Squares Vermont. Before COVID, our call center got about 3,000 calls on average per week. And now we're getting anywhere from 6,000 to upwards of almost 9,000 calls per week to our call center. We've also received a lot more applications for 3Squares Vermont because of the pandemic. So to give you a background there, January through March before COVID was really well known in the United States. We were receiving about 500 to 700 applications per week. And then late March into early April, we were getting over 1,000 and almost 1,300 per week for 3Squares Vermont. Those numbers did decline through around June, and we think that's probably caused by the unemployment benefits that were available to people. But right now, we're seeing those numbers creep back up, and we're around 800 new applications for benefits every week. So we have been really grateful for the congressional relief provided over the spring and summer and fall. And I'm going to give you a little bit of information about what we're doing here in Vermont. So the Families First Coronavirus Response Act did provide additional benefits to households to be able to purchase food, and it also provided the state some flexibilities that Vermont has taken advantage of. So through the legislation, we did take advantage of suspending time-limited benefits for customers, and Haley's going to share a little bit more about that just a few minutes. But really importantly, we also were able to offer the maximum emergency allotment benefits. So those are the benefits that brought every household up to the maximum benefit amount for their household size. So we provided those supplemental benefits every month since March. In order to provide the emergency allotment, we need a state of emergency declaration by our governor here in Vermont, along with the federal public health emergency declaration by the Secretary of Health and Human Services. So every month since March, we've been providing around $3 million per month in these supplemental benefits. So far, that's about $18 million to Vermonters. We were just approved for the October emergency allotment benefits. So the September benefits will be provided to families in just about 9 days. That's the middle of October. And the October benefits will be provided to families on November 16th. Also, really importantly, the pandemic EBT benefits were very helpful to families. So as others have shared, those were available to all children who received free or reduced price lunch in schools. And those took effect when schools were closed for the rest of the 2019-2020 school year. That benefit was $387.60 for every child who was eligible for free and reduced price meals as of April 1st. We also provided prorated benefit amounts for families who were new to that program. So these benefits were a great collaboration between DCF and the Agency of Education and all the local school districts and schools. We manually put together a list of every child eligible. Those lists were provided to DCF and we administered the benefits. What was really interesting about these benefits is they were available to SNAP households and non-SNAP households. So we saw a lot of new families that we'd never seen before at ESD. So in total, we have provided for the 2019-2020 school year just over $15 million. Those were provided to almost 26,000 households. And of those households, it was 39,000 children. So only a quarter of those families and households were SNAP beneficiaries. 3/4 were not. So we have a lot of families that we can reach still, I think, with 3 Squares Vermont. And then the Families First Act also provided some application processing flexibilities that were really important, especially when the pandemic was just beginning. We took advantage in Vermont of the waiver to extend the certification periods and the interim reports for 6 months. We took advantage of that March, April, and May of this year. And we also took advantage of the waiver of the interview requirement in the month of April. We resumed those interviews in May here in Vermont because we do have the availability to do telephone interviews. So we went ahead and continued those as of May. We also had a fair hearing waiver, so that extended. There are strict rules for SNAP about when the fair hearing has to be held and decided. So we extended the deadline for those through August. That was March through August, just to allow greater flexibility for folks who weren't able to have their fair hearing in a timely manner. And then I think it's also important to share, so quality control is a big part of the SNAP program as well. And quality control requires in-person interviews. So those have been suspended through the end of the calendar year. I think I went through my COVID benefits updates pretty quickly, and now Aletha and Haley are going to share some other important updates from our program.
Thank you, Leslie. Good morning, everyone. I just want to take a quick minute before I get into my quick talking points and then turn it over to Haley. Looking at the chat box and all of the people logging in, I challenge you, Phil, to tally up everybody's years and see how much experience we have on this call. It's quite miraculous to work in this space and see the amount of experience and just the commitment from everyone. So it definitely is a great way to start my day, to get to step out of ESD and share this work that we do with all of you. So I'm going to just share a couple of quick updates and turn it over to Haley. So I'm not sure if folks are aware, but we did go live with a pilot in May, and that was an online purchasing pilot. So not specifically related to COVID, but it seemed like a good time for us to jump into this. And I think FNS was being a little bit more flexible during this time, so we were able to get this going quite quickly. So this allows 3Squares Vermont households to purchase food online, and we are currently partnered with Amazon and Walmart. So that provides home delivery or curbside pickup. And there is information on our website where you can reach out to us with any questions. I think at a later point in time, we'll probably share some data on how that's going, but it is still quite new. And then for those of you that have been around for a while, you're familiar with what we call desk review. But I just wanted to give a quick highlight of that. So with every new federal fiscal year, which begins on October 1st, us, the state agency, must update our standards and deductions related to SNAP benefits. So you'll notice on the Hunger Free Vermont outreach materials, Phil does a great job, or whoever behind the scenes works along with us and the materials that we update. So all of those materials are marked last updated October 2020, and the highlighted changes that I wanted to point out that you might want to look into if you haven't reviewed this yet is the gross monthly income changes. And we did have an increase to the maximum allotment levels. So that was a win for this year. And then most exciting in my world has been the 3Squares Vermont in a SNAP project. Some of you may know it as the Elderly Simplified Application Project through FNS. This is a demonstration project, a waiver that you can apply for through FNS, which Vermont did. And we went live on October 1st, very exciting. So there's many details that I could share with you, but I would encourage all of you to attend an afternoon session on this where we'll go a little bit deeper into this with myself and another partner of ours from outside of this world. Her name's Ty Jones Cox. And yeah, so if you want to find out more about that, I would encourage you to attend tomorrow's afternoon session.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Haley Turner Lawyer. I am here with ESD DCF, and I am going to talk to you about time-limited benefits, or ABODs, as well as our SNAP ENT program called the Individual Career Advancement Network, or ICANN, in Vermont. So as a couple of people have mentioned this morning, our time-limited benefits, or our ABOD program, has been suspended since March, April, due to COVID. That was obviously really great because people who would have been receiving, let's say, countable months or had work requirements, had those suspended during that period of time. That rule did have some suspended if this. So one of the things that we worked really, really hard for over the last couple of months was to secure an ongoing suspension of that, which is a geographic waiver that Vermont applies for. Vermont has applied for this traditionally, and it usually covers a couple towns in the state. But this year we were able to get a statewide geographic waiver. So as of October 1st, anybody in the state who would have been time limited and who would have had a work requirement now would meet the geographic exemption. So there's no work requirements and no having benefits suspended due to not meeting work requirements, at least hopefully through the next federal fiscal year, so that waiver is granted for 1 year. I think it was mentioned on the call some of the injunctions that are currently happening, and that waiver is tied to one of those. So the hope is that that waiver can continue, but at this point we have it for a year, and we're very, very happy about that. And that actually started on 10/1. The other thing that kind of was suspended and stopped around the time that COVID started back in March was our Individual Career Advancement Network started working, or our ENT program started working on a very minimal basis. Our key referrals from ESD into the ICANN program was through our Department of Labor, and most of those processes had to be paused just due to the pandemic and what was able to be resource-wise, what was able to be done. So while people could still have enrolled in our ENT program, it was definitely on a slower rate than we had seen pre-COVID. And as we headed into our new federal fiscal year, which started on 10/1, the ESD team, as well as many of our ICANN partners, came together to see what our program could look like in the future. So it's really exciting. As of October 1st, our ICANN program, including all the referrals within ICANN, have opened back up. A key change and something that I think is really important for all of you guys is that initial referral into the ICANN program is no longer a referral to an agency. That referral is now a referral to an online orientation that's housed on the ICANN website. For me, when I go look for it, I usually Google ICANN Vermont and go to the DCF website that way. But it's basically a quick questionnaire that a customer would have to complete and to watch a 5-minute orientation into the program. And by doing those two things, it kind of starts the process of ESD taking a look at that case, getting it to the appropriate partner, which is now VREAP, to do an initial assessment and kind of get that customer rolling into the ENT program and into a pathway to employment. So all of that actually started on 10/1. So referrals have slowly creeped in. We're continuing to work with our partners to ensure that the program is set up for safety within customers due to COVID guidance, as well as ensuring that agencies and businesses around the state that are hiring are able to connect to employees who are looking for employment. So it's really exciting to have that program up and running again after it's been suspended, or at least working on a very as needed basis over the course of the pandemic. I think that's all I had.
Thank you so much, Leslie, Aletha, and Haley, for those updates and for all the work that you're doing on the state level at DCF to make sure folks can be connected with these benefits. It looks like we've gotten a couple of questions in the Q&A session, and I believe, if I'm correct, Aletha is going to address the first question live.
Hello. So I see the message. I'm going to read it in case folks can't see it. There's a major issue that people with EBT cash benefits can't order groceries to be delivered, and there's no way to use these benefits while staying quarantined. Amazon doesn't accept EBT cash, and Walmart will only do curbside pickup in Bennington and doesn't deliver in Vermont. This is currently from the DCF website. I've been told that ESD can't transfer these funds to a bank account so they can be used. I've been trying to find an answer to this since March or April and can't get an answer. So thank you for bringing this up so that we could discuss it with everyone, because I'm sure other folks around the state maybe have run into this issue. Vermont is really unique in that if you are elderly or disabled, you can receive your SNAP benefits as cash. And there are some issues with this, exactly what was stated in the question. And we're working to mitigate those. We don't have a resolution yet. Again, this is still really new to us, and getting used to the limitations within the technology, trying to onboard other folks other than Amazon and Walmart. And it is true that Bennington is the only curbside pickup. So there's some work that needs to be done there. We definitely didn't want to delay going live because of these limitations, because we know it is helping people. But these are things that we are aware of and working to address. And Leslie, I don't know if you have anything to add to that. But thank you for bringing that up. And I'm happy to write your name down. Is it Kara or Kara? And I can reach out to you once we have some more information.
Yeah, thank you, Aletha. I could just add, we have also been working with local retailers who are an important part of our system on how to help with curbside delivery curbside pickup or delivery. And so we've offered wireless EBT machines to local retailers if that would be helpful. We've had trouble getting that off the ground, honestly, and so we'll continue to work on that as well. Thank you for that question.
Okay, there is a second question in, actually quite a few now, questions in the Q&A section. I will read it out loud and leave it to whomever to answer. The second question is, does the Form 120 out-of-pocket medical expense form need to be signed by a medical provider at this time? Does the 120 form need to be signed by the applicant? Form states long-term care applicants only need to sign 120 form. There was a period of time during COVID-19 that these signatures were being waived.
So the 120 is a form that we use to help with our medical expense deduction. And it does need to be signed for, there's some particular categories within the form. And Paula, if you want to reach out to me, I could walk you through the different sections of that. There are certain requirements for long-term care. So that is a little bit different than it is for 3Squares Vermont. And the period of time during COVID that these signatures were being waived, I actually have to go check on that because I am not certain if we ended that or if we're still doing that. And I don't know if Leslie or Haley know off the top of their head, but I don't want to give you incorrect information. So Paula, if you let me know who you are, then I can reach out to you after and follow up on that. I guess what I would just add to that is if a customer was having an issue with signatures due to COVID, we would definitely use every flexibility possible within the state to help that customer utilize the form.
Thank you so much for that answer, Aletha. And I am more than happy to connect you with Paula. I believe I have that information readily available. We have a question that was submitted, and it is, can the EBT card be used at a Walmart in a neighboring state? Example, New Hampshire, Hinsdale, which would serve the Brattleboro area.
So I can start to answer that, Phil. We know that other states are also pursuing the online purchasing pilot with Walmart. I don't know the status of New Hampshire right now, but we are planning to post the locations in other states where Vermonters could also use their card. So we will be updating our website.
Thank you, Leslie. And additionally, if you are shopping with 3Squares Vermont benefits, you can do that at any retailer across the country that accepts EBT and SNAP. Okay. A question about ICANN. Is it the individuals who can start the application process online? Is it in the individuals who can start the application process online? Beth,
Yeah.
Okay.
I was just gonna say, yeah, anybody could go to our website and access that orientation. Customers are provided information about ICANN if they're interested in ICANN during their 3Squares interview. But they are the ones that would go to that website and access that. And anybody could access that at any time.
Thank you, Haley. Beth, I hope that answered your question. If there was more to it, please let us know. We have about 12 minutes left before the end of this session, and I believe that we have answered all of the questions live that I currently have in front of me. Oh, and then I'm just seeing another one. Is there another option for orientation for those folks that don't have internet access?
So I can say currently we are working on this process for those individuals who might not be able to access that online orientation. But if somebody notes that they are not able to access it, have them call the call center, and the call center will send them the orientation as a paper version, and we'll gather some preliminary information from them in order to forward that to the team on the call, me, Leslie, and Aletha, in order for us to get that referral over there. So instead of them filling out the questionnaire, the person on the phone would gather that information, and then they would receive that orientation in the mail.
Thank you, Haley. I believe that is all of the questions. I think I've caught up and realized that there's a scroll feature to the Q&A. It looks like that was the last question that's been submitted there. We do have 10 minutes left of this session. If other folks have questions for our panelists who are experts on SNAP in Vermont, 3Squares Vermont in our state, and we're happy to have them here. Okay, Faye writes in, excuse me, can someone please speak to changes that happened with last month to the online application?
So specifically the regular application, or are you talking about, because I'm actually, oh, online. Do you mean online application, like an application for benefits?
It's a new login
features. And this is specific to the online application. Okay, so I was aware of some changes to the uploader. I was not aware of changes to the application. I'm happy to continue the Q&A with I'm probably others are maybe having the same questions. So can you be more specific, Faye? Is there a specific requirement that was changed for the app? I'm not aware of application changes. I did know there were some questions coming in about the uploader. I'm not sure if she's writing, but I'm not. Oh, here we go. Login changes. Okay. I would have to find out more information from our business application support unit to know what specific changes happened. So when someone goes to log in, they have to click a link. This is new in the last month. So I guess if you could be more specific about how this is creating a barrier, or I'm sorry that I'm just not catching on to what the specific issue is for the end user. Have to verify their account. Yeah, that was something that we heard about. So if they aren't sitting in front of their computer, we cannot help them. If we create a new account for the client, they have to physically check their email. I know, Faye. I wish we were all in person too. It's a much different experience. Would it be helpful if I just found out what the changes were that were made to the online app versus the uploader? Because I'm not clear on if they're the same or two separate issues that were updated at the same time. And I can certainly give feedback to those that work on this behind the scenes. Our team wasn't a part of the changes, so I actually found out about the uploader sort of feedback after it had already gone into production. So I'm happy to, I think for myself, I need to go find out what the changes were and if they were the same or different for the application versus the uploader. And maybe that's a good thing to bring to the next work group meeting. I really don't have information specifically And then Paul is saying, are you referring to the new 3SMP application? So that's just a fillable form right now. That one's not actually the same as the other application. So I think, Faye, you're talking about the regular 3Squares Vermont application and not the new fillable 3Squares Vermont and a SNAP application.
Okay, I apologize. So Faye, if you did want to ask your question, please just say so and I can unmute you here. I tried to say that earlier, but I had muted myself. It looks like there are a couple other questions in here. Aletha just answered the one from Paula. So someone else wrote in, I used to use the uploader to help participants submit request documents like pay stubs. Okay, so this is one I think we'll take back and get a more full answer from folks at DCF and have available in our notes. And we'll continue conversations on that topic at work group to make sure folks are updated as to what's happening.
And thank
Emily,
you. Sorry, Phil. Thank you for bringing it up. I appreciate hearing the feedback.
And then Emily wrote in that there's a new question asking, are you uploading documents for yourself or someone else? And asks, does this mean we can log in as a service provider, but upload documents on behalf of another person? And
I will find out.
Wonderful. And some of these other notes we will certainly save regarding the uploader and get information back to people. And I will now officially, seeing that Faye is saying she would like to speak, I'll unmute her to share vocally. Okay, Faye, you should now be allowed to speak.
Thank you so much, Phil. So what I was referring to is this was a change that happened both with the online application and within the uploader. And it's an additional step where when somebody registers for an online account so that they can complete their regular 3Squares Vermont application, normally they could just log in with their email address and they would make up a password and they could just log in. Now there's an additional step where they get an email from the server or whatever sent to their email address, and they have to click a link to like verify their account before it'll let you do anything. So I know, like for me, since COVID, I've assisted numerous people who don't have regular internet access or don't have access to a computer at the moment, but really need help getting through the process. And I was able to like help them get registered, fill out the application, and then they would go in when they were near their computer to sign it and submit it. And now like we can't do that anymore. And it's really frustrating. Also with the uploader, it's kind of the same issue where unless the person you're assisting is at a computer right at that moment, which is difficult, you know, in Vermont, they can't upload their stuff because the same thing, they have to be able to click that link verifying their registration before you can do anything. And that's it. I'll mute myself again.
All right, thank you, Faye. That's helpful to hear it in your words. I know that's a lot to have to try to type. It sounds like I'm guessing, and I'm gonna go find out, but it sounds like there probably was an agency-wide, you know, additional security and authentication that happened, and probably was a requirement. But I will find out and loop back around with everybody. And again, thank you for the feedback. I will share that and see if there's anything that we can do to help this.
Well, with just 2 minutes left, we would love to thank you all of the attendees for joining. And I sincerely, again, thank all of our panelists and the folks that they work with for joining us today and spending this hour this morning, sharing updates, having conversation with us all about this. We on our end can certainly make notes from all of the chat and the questions, and we will make those things available after the conference. And I think lastly, what I would love to mention is that we still have many sessions ahead of us. Please, use the time in between the sessions to stretch or do work. And we really look forward to seeing you all in whatever session you choose next, beginning at 10:15. And we have on the schedule Shopping with 3 Squares Vermont, a closer look at local food incentive programs, and determining household income when applying for 3 Squares Vermont, the ins and outs of what counts. So hopefully we see some of you in those rooms. And if anybody didn't pop their name and org into the chat box, please do so just to give us a hand with attendance for today. Otherwise, thank you all and have a great afternoon.